Well, thank you for coming on this wonderful Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day.
Mother's Day.
To all who are mothers, to all who celebrate their mothers, and just in general celebration of the mother energy that sustains all of us. Because I don't think you actually have to be a female or have children to exhibit that mothering energy, as we all know, because I think somebody said the whole congregation does it here, because we are a nurturing and a loving and a sustaining group. Mothers hold a unique place, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, in our minds and in our hearts. When we think about sacrifice, unconditional love, constancy, humor, patience, it's our mothers who come to mind. Or just the notion of motherhood itself, isn't it? I recently read an article about a teacher who had a middle school science class. This class was studying magnets, and on the test, she asked for a 6-letter word beginning with M, meaning something that picks things up. 50% of the class wrote down mothers. That's funny. But we know that it's very true. So my talk today is entitled Making Mom Proud. And think about that. Wasn't that a great incentive as we were growing up? We all wanted our mothers to be proud of us. And it's not because they were demanding or judgmental or harsh or punitive. It's that even if they were flawed and incredibly human and sometimes just went over the top, they exemplified and they taught us those virtues and those principles that we knew were right. Kindness, compassion, patience, love, and peace. Of all the authority figures surrounding us, our mothers were our main reference points, our main teachers, our main coaches, our main cheerleaders, our main guides. As the Spanish proverb goes, an ounce of mother is worth a ton of priest. Here at one word we can say, an ounce of mother is worth a ton of, and I'll let you fill in the blank. So today, in the context of this day, celebrating the ultimate peacemakers, the ultimate peacekeepers, our mothers, we continue our series on peace. Today we're going to talk about living peace, what our lives lived in peace might look like, and those spiritual principles that we can apply to help us walk down that road on that journey. So as I thought about peace, I thought of the Buddhist faith tradition because that's the first faith tradition that comes in my mind when I think about peace. And I thought of the teachings of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is one of my favorite spiritual teachers and someone about whom I speak often. He teaches that peace in our communities and peace in our world is possible only when we live lives of compassion. In his view, the exercise of compassion in our daily lives is critical, and it is for all of us, whether we are religious or not, whether we are quote-unquote believers or not. As he said, compassion is not a religious business, but a human business. It is not luxury, it is essential for our own peace and mental stability. It is essential for human survival. In his experience, it all starts there. It all starts with compassion, looking outside ourselves to the needs of others, looking from our eyes into the hearts of others. When we can feel compassion for others, even and especially those whom we don't like, those who disagree with us, those who may wish us harm, peace will follow. Here's how I see it when I talk about living peace. Peace is the principle, but compassion is the practice. Do you see the difference? Peace is the principle, compassion is the practice. Living compassion is how we get there. We live peace by practicing it, as Confucius taught, all day and every day. So as I thought more about compassion, I looked, as I said before, to Karen Armstrong, who has long been a vocal leader for the principle of compassion in our world. Karen Armstrong spent her early years as a religious sister. She left the convent and became a scholar of comparative religions. She likes to talk about herself as a professor of English literature, but she's a great deal more than that. After her years in the convent, she found herself at one point in Jerusalem. She on her TED Talk, she said, you know, I was quiet, I was introspective, I was just all by myself in my room, and so of course when I left the convent, I found myself in television. And the person she was talking to said, oh, we'll take anyone. So she found herself making a film about early Christianity, and she realized that she knew very little about the other Abrahamic faiths that lived cheek by jowl with Christianity in that holy city. So she began to study Judaism and Islam. She began to lecture and teach about the need for greater interfaith understanding and not acceptance. So many of us say acceptance. I said acceptance. The word she uses is appreciation. Greater interfaith understanding and welcoming of other understandings, other paths to God, other faith traditions. So in February of 2008, she won the TED Prize, which is, you guys know TED, right? Technology and Design, Technology, Engineering and Design. Okay. Awarded annually to those creative thinkers designed, dedicated to making positive global change. As a matter of fact, we have a TED speaker right here. Melanie did a TED Talk, and one day we're going to hear it and even watch it, so we're proud of you. She used the occasion of her winning that TED Prize to call for the creation of what she called the Charter for Compassion, which was unveiled the following year. The Charter is a relatively short document. You can find it at charterforcompassion.org. It was drafted by a multi-faith, multinational group calling itself the Council of Conscience in Switzerland. The creators of the Charter envisioned the creation of compassionate cities, compassionate communities, compassionate core groups of workers, creating a world, a global community in which all are respected and nurtured and honored and promoted, in which human life, in which the designs of our heart and our hopes are just sustained, where we can all live compassionate lives. As she writes, a compassionate world is a peaceful world. The Charter for Compassion is a statement of principle and at the same time a plan of action. I really encourage you to go to that website and take a look at it. Here in Atlanta, the Charter is promoted by the organization called Compassionate Atlanta, and One World is proud to be one of its partners. If you go to Compassionate Atlanta, Google that, you will see that it has a whole list of partner organizations, and One World is one of them. In February of 2014, the Atlanta City Council voted to designate Atlanta as a compassionate city, and in that same month, that vote was confirmed by the mayor. Atlanta is one of 2 major metropolitan cities identified as a compassionate city. Atlanta is so cool. We just don't know it, I think, because we live here. You know how it is when you live in New York and you never go to the Statue of Liberty? So Atlanta, it's a compassionate city, and it's the only city I know of that has adopted an interfaith manifesto. Those are 2 very cool things. So Armstrong travels the world promoting compassionate action as what she calls the task of our lives. It is the task to which our generation is called. The only way we are going to be able to live together in sustainable global community. So in her book, 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, she goes into a little bit of neuroscience. Seriously, this is a fun book. And she does it only to illustrate that we are hardwired for compassion. Our brains are designed for altruism and compassion. And she gives credit for this human capacity to mothers. As I was thinking about this talk, I thought, what a great day to talk about compassion. Because it's that mothering instinct that got us to where we are. And here's how she talks about it. As our human brains developed and evolved, first came what's called our reptilian brain. We've all heard of that. Our reptilian brain is down at the bottom in the brain stem and the cerebellum, and it drives fight, flee, eat, and reproduce. That's what it does. It's our instincts. It just drives us to do those very fundamental acts. However, we evolved, and over the centuries, on top of that brain, we developed what's called the neocortex, which is the seat of abstract thinking, conscience, language, connection. The way that happened is as we developed the ability to nurture our young, to care for each other, these complex tasks required the creation of a larger brain. It required the creation of a more complex brain. So our brains physically grew. The humans have, this is what happens when you unleash me on Google, humans have the largest brains in connection to our body size. We don't have the largest brains of all mammals because there are other mammals that are bigger. But we have the largest brains in ratio to our body size. As in past millennia, we became able to care for our young. We started building shelters. As our brains got larger, our babies had to be born more prematurely so that their heads could get down the birth canal. So therefore, they were more helpless, requiring more care from their mothers. Are you following this? This is way cool. So instead of just being born and being able to walk off and take care of themselves, we had to carry them around. We were hairless. They couldn't cling to us for support, so we had to carry them. So in this dance of biology and behavior, they supported each other in expanding our need for and our capacity for empathy, nurturing others, and altruism, turning us into the compassionate beings that we are now. Altruism is defined by Merriam-Webster as unselfish regard for or devotion to the welfare of others. I can't think of a better definition of motherhood. Can you? Putting everything aside to care for that small, helpless being that depends entirely on you. It was this maternal instinct, the desire and the need to put another first, that was very likely the source of our human ability to empathize. This is how Karen Armstrong puts it. A mother's concern for her child pervades all her activities, whether she feels like it or not. She has to get up to her crying infant night after night, watch him at every moment of the day, and learn to control her own exhaustion, impatience, anger, and frustration. She is tied to her child long after he has reached adulthood. Indeed, on both sides, the relationship is usually terminated only at death. Think about that. Maternal love can be heartbreaking as well as fulfilling. It requires stamina, fortitude, and a strong degree of selflessness. This is why I'm celebrating this on Mother's Day. As John Feibig said, and I love this quote, the hand that rocks the cradle usually is attached to someone who isn't getting enough sleep. Yeah. So all the mothers are laughing. I see the husband. Armstrong has done 2 TED Talks, and I encourage you to look at both of them. The first was right after she won her prize. It contained her idea and her plea for the Charter for Compassion. The second was entitled, Let's Revive the Golden Rule. As she speaks about compassion, that is where she focuses. She focuses on the Golden Rule, and there is an urgency to her message. As a scholar of comparative religions, she knows that the world's faith traditions are entirely in line with the teaching of the Golden Rule, and they've been giving us this message for centuries. The Golden Rule, as it's articulated in each faith tradition, is not just a nice saying we put on a pillow. It is the heart. It is at the heart of every major faith tradition. You may have heard the story attributed to the sage Hillel. It is said that who was a contemporary of Jesus's. It is said that a pagan approached Hillel and promised to convert to Judaism if Hillel would stand on one leg and recite the entire Torah. Hillel replied, standing on one leg, "What is hateful to yourself, do not do to your fellow man. That is the whole of the Torah, and the rest is commentary. Go study it." So he managed to do that. The first iteration of the Golden Rule came from Confucius 5 centuries before Christ. He was asked which of his teachings his disciples could practice all day and every day, and he replied, perhaps the saying about shu, which is translated as consideration. He said, never do to others what you would not like them to do to you. That was 5 centuries before Christ. Never do to others what you would not like them to do to you. What does that require of us? That requires of us that we put ourselves in the place of another, that we look at their life experience through our eyes and feel the connection that joins us. Armstrong writes that Confucius taught that this principle was the thread that ran right through the spiritual tradition he called the Tao, or the Way, and it pulled all its teachings together. So the world's faith traditions teach that the exercise of compassion brings us to a place that is not reachable. when we stay limited to our own ego. When we stay in our own head, when we focus on ourselves, when we think what is happening with us, when we look at the world through eyes that identifies us as separate, we are unable to make that connection with the divine. We are unable to touch that source within ourselves that tells us that we are all connected. Practicing compassion brings us in touch with our deepest humanity, beyond our self-centeredness, beyond our egotism, which generally dictates our actions. We live without self-interest. We act purely for the benefit of the other, out of a sincere desire to make the other happy, whole, safe, or healed. We've all heard stories of heroism, of amazing things that people do with no thought to their own safety, and often with no thought to their own lives. I remember a story, and I think I've told it here once before, of some American businessmen who were visiting, I think in Japan, they were visiting what back then was called a leper colony. And they saw there an American woman working as a nurse. And she was loving, and she was caring, and she just shone with love for these patients. One of the businessmen said, "I would not work here for $1 million." And she said, "Neither would I." That's not why she was doing it. Practicing compassion, living the golden rule, it ushers us into the presence of God. That is why it is so central to every faith tradition. It is the road that leads us into our own divinity, into our connection with everyone else, into that divinity that shines on us from wherever we are. Compassion is not pity. Sometimes we think it is. Sometimes we get them confused. It is not pity. It is to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. This is Karen Armstrong's writing. To feel her pain as though it were our own. To enter generously into another's point of view. When we are able to put ourselves aside, to see through the eyes of the other, we realize that we are one. We realize that when we harm others, we are harmed ourselves. When others inflict pain on someone else, it hurts us, whether we know it or not, whether we feel it or not, because of that connection. A life of compassion is where religion is supposed to take us. This is what frustrates me when I look at people who have just thrown out religion and they say, "Oh, that's garbage, that's power, that's imposing someone's beliefs on me." And I think that is not where religion is supposed to take us. Religion is supposed to take us to a life of love and compassion. All of them are supposed to take us there. That, if you throw them into a pot, and I'm now telling you everything I know about cooking, you take the religions, you throw them all into a pot, you boil them down, you get the golden rule. In all of them. Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. Armstrong said, she's talking about religion, she said, "I am not interested in the afterlife. Religion is supposed to be about losing your ego, not preserving it eternally in optimum conditions." In Christianity, the rule is stated positively. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Other faith traditions reverse it. You heard the version in Judaism. Similarly, the Hindu Mahabharata teaches, do not do to others what would cause pain if done to you. Okay, so hang on 2 seconds. What I did is in the website, in the Charter for Compassion, she has put up the world's different faith traditions, version of the Golden Rule. So I brought them here. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, so this is Buddhism. Treat not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. I mean, this is wonderful. Every faith tradition, and she has 13 listed on the Charter for Compassion, and there are more. I didn't include all 13 here, but this is just a sampling. The Baha'i faith. Lay not on any soul a load that you would not wish to be laid upon you, and desire not for anyone the things you would not desire for yourself. Confucianism. One word which sums up the basis of all good conduct, loving kindness. Do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. Hinduism. This is the sum of duty. Do not do to others what would cause pain if done to you. This is wonderful. This is the thread that runs through religion throughout. This is the takeaway that we are supposed to live. It's an active thing in our daily lives. Islam. Not one of you truly believes until you wish for others what you wish for yourself. Judaism. What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. This is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary, as Hillel said. Native spirituality. We are as much alive as we keep the earth alive. It's that reciprocity that sustains us. All boats rise. We only find joy, we only find peace, we only have a sustainable global community if we all realize that when we injure the earth, when we injure each other, we injure ourselves. Sikhism. I am a stranger to no one, and no one is a stranger to me. Indeed, I am a friend to all. And finally, Taoism. Regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. These precepts are at the heart, are the motivating energy behind the world's scriptures. So, why haven't we gotten the message? These have been around a very long time. It's not a popular message. This is one thing Armstrong talks about. In her TED Talk, she says that when she is up in front of churches and she's talking about compassion, she looks out and the faces that she sees, she describes as mutinous. Love your neighbor. I think not. Why? Because it's hard work. She says people would rather be right than be compassionate. Maybe we need to flip that around. It's easy to sit in the pews and nod in agreement with whatever's being said. It is hard to get out and do it. But if we are to live in peace, as individuals and as communities, we need to get this message. Not only get it, we need to start doing it. We need to get it into our hearts. This is how we need to live. Okay, so at this point, I started having some fun. I said, well, we are not getting the message. Why are we not getting the message? And then I thought, God may not be communicating it right. Because, you know, I mean, think about it. We don't read long things nowadays. We don't read articles. We don't read blogs. What do? We read tweets. So God needs a Twitter account. Here we go. I made one up. He is the I am. And I love your song. I am. This is God's Twitter account. And he's tweeting us. 11 words, 49 characters. Hashtag living peace. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay, there it is. But what do? Just like kids, we don't get the message. So what does he do? Just what mom would do. I'm not kidding. Do it now. I think if God had a Twitter account, it would go a lot farther. So let's just pretend he does. What is God's tweet for the day? Do unto others, that's it, as you would have them do unto you. So let's pay attention to the task of our time. Let's pay attention to what we are hearing. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, compassion is a verb. It's get up out of the seats and get your feet moving. We have the chance to make our moms proud by living lives that matter, by lifting each other up, by lifting all of us up. Let's not add another few centuries before we get that message.